Hi, my name is Josh Rutstein. This video is an introduction to a concept I'm calling resource design. Resource design is a response to what I see as years of poor decision making in large companies as they look to employ technology as a means to create more automation and efficiency in their operations. The goal is always to provide more capabilities for our customers at a lower cost. The challenge most often manifests itself when providing solutions for internal customers, but I think the concept is universal. So let's talk about the problem. Okay, so let's imagine any company that you can take as an example. You've got some sort of vice president who heads up an analysis team, and he or she has four analysts reporting directly to them. And those analysts are performing services for the service lines of the organization. They're kind of a shared services team. And they're aligned one-to-one. And they're doing this process where they consult with the person that they're working with, they perform some analysis, they might scope a solution, they might build some sort of desktop proof of concept or a mock-up or a prototype or some sort of tool they build in their desktop to help solve the problem of the service lines. And they do this, and the expectation is that they're going to do this across the entire organization. As they work with one, they're going to come back to them, but they might be going on and working with the other service lines as well. Lo and behold, CEO comes down on high and says, hey, I'm hearing from these guys out in the service lines that you're doing some great work. How can we move faster to get those services out to the other service lines? The VP says, well, I need 2 more people. If I had 2 more people, I could deploy them to other groups. That might free up new people sooner, so that eventually we can move on to the other groups. And that would be a good thing. So CEO and VP kind of estimate what 2 people will cost. Talk to the CFO, can we afford that? CFO says, well, based on what everyone else has been saying about the benefits up to this point, it seems like a good investment, positive ROI, fits with what we want to do strategically, so let's do it. Now later on, we might engage the CIO and say, hey, you know what? We've been building all these little desktop prototypes and POCs and things of that sort. How can we build some tech solution to go around it? Well, that CIO is going to go off, he's going to consult his tech team, he's going to figure out, he's going to look at all these prototypes, hand them over on desktop and figure out what they're going to do. That's a different process, and I'll deal with that later, but just keep that in the back of your mind that people are doing this the entire time. The CFO, once he gives the green light to this project, CEO says, let's go do it. Now, if you're a big company, this is how you think. But your competition, think of the startup world. They're thinking tech first. They're thinking of how can I think like a CIO? How can I think about doing all this with technology first? The advantage of being a big company is that you have resources, you have capital, you have money, you have things that the startup world doesn't have. So you need to take advantage of that. You need to think about how can I do this better? How can I act more like a startup to enable that capital to work most effectively for me? Because if I'm getting services out to my customer faster than that startup would because I have the capital to employ it, well then that's a competitive advantage, and I've got to exploit that. So if you really think about it, the problem actually exists a little bit earlier. The problem exists because this VP who's charged with doing analysis has a team, and when you've got a team, you want to put the team to work. Every problem looks like a nail when you've got a hammer. So instead of that, let's think about how things should work. If someone wants to do work, someone's engaging with the customer or the service lines to figure out what they want, they need to then figure out the best way to deploy that. Deploying that might not always be people. But what you can do is you can consult with a resource designer. You can consult with someone who's been trained, who has the wherewithal, who has the ability to reach out to various different areas of the organization to engage all the resources that you have at your disposal to figure out the best way to solve that problem, to scope out a problem, a solution to the problem that solves the needs of all the service lines. That creates scale across the organization. So how do we do that? We look at, and the resource designer is going to look at vendors. Possibly we can buy some technology. We can employ our own technology team. We can employ people, both and change the process. We can look at people within our group, within the various service lines. We can look at other business units. We can look at all different places within the company to figure out the best combination of things that work. In addition to that, that resource designer should also be working with the service lines directly to say, hey, if you bend a little bit, we can save a whole lot of money and figure out the best way to create a solution for you that works for everybody. We can create scale across the company. We can push back on some requirements that might not necessarily be in the best interest of the entire company for creating scale. Again, remember, the solution is always to make the customer most happy, but sometimes you can work with a customer to figure out how you can save them some money and move ahead with the solution. From there, from this estimate of what this thing is going to cost to do, well, then we can talk to the CFO and say, well, does it make sense to do that? We have an accurate question to ask them about what we're going to do to solve the problem. Just adding people isn't always the best solution. Figure out the best solution, and then figure out, does that cost make sense? Is it cost effective at that point? All right, so what do we need to make this whole thing happen? Well, I break it down into 3 different components. First, we need some sort of resource design team. We need people that are trained, that have the ability to look across HR to figure out, the people that we have, the groups that we have, what people cost, things of that sort. The CIO and the technical world to understand technology and the capabilities that we have. CFO to understand a little bit about finance and how we're going to engage the finance to figure out some sort of cost-benefit analysis, return on investment to figure out what we should be doing and how far we can spend. To the business units to understand the groups that are involved, how we can employ the resources that are in the company already, and the service lines, people actually out doing the work that need either products or reduce costs within our organization. Second thing we need to teach technology to business people. So everybody acknowledges that the world is going to be automation soon, that it's coming, and that we need to deal with it. The problem is that everyone's scared of it. You don't need to necessarily write code to understand technology. You just need to understand how business rules can affect a technology solution, about how you can change your thinking a little bit in the way that you operate, about the business process to work with the way technology thinks, about how boxes and lines come together to form an architecture for a solution. That's not hard to do. And the last thing, as I talked about earlier, no more desktop proof of concepts. It's a waste of time. It's too hard to reverse engineer when we need to hand that to technology to figure out what a scalable solution would be. We need to actually start building things in scalable environments, in the cloud, to get it off people's desktops into a place where it can be supported by a production stack. Now, we don't necessarily need to build the end-all solution, but this has to be somewhere that someone can take it over, that someone can handle it, that they don't need to reverse engineer when people leave. If you're building a desktop proof of concept and someone leaves the organization, well, again, we always talk about the single points of failure. Now we've just created one. So what we can do instead is leverage the technology, the CIO team and that world to say, okay, do we have people that need to build, MVP of something? We don't need anything really, really big, but how can we let people in the organization already experiment on their own time about doing some homework projects? They have that bottom drawer project where they're working on at night, or they're learning some new technology. How can they prove that they're going to be useful to the company beyond that? They can work on their own time, or carve out 10-20% in a day to work on something that's not part of their core portfolio. And what they're actually doing is they're building all these proof of concepts for us in a tech stack that doesn't leave us stuck or hurt or going to be constrained by what happens with people after they leave the company. In subsequent videos, I'm going to talk more about these skills, how to develop the solutions that we talked about earlier, how to build those 3 core competencies within your organization, and how to make that real for you moving forward. To subscribe to my newsletter, please click the email link below. I've got a white paper that spells out this whole concept in a little bit more depth. I can email it to you if you submit your email address. We'll talk soon. Have a great day.